What's up?
What's going on? We're back in the studio, 2026.
We are. It's definitely a goal for 2026, I think, is to be here and do more of this.
Yeah, we got some messages we want to get out there, and it's so easy to do nowadays with all this AI and all this cool stuff, so why not?
Yeah, it's real easy. We spent a whole year learning AI and CapCut and everything else, but now it'll be straightforward and simple.
Somebody said in one of those webinars yesterday for, who did it? I forget already. Anyway, Riz Media it was.
Riz Media, there you go.
Where somebody just used CapCut, I think it was just CapCut and ChatGPT, they could rule the world, So there's a ton of AI out there, but at the end of the day, pick a couple and just use it.
Yeah, well, just do something, right? So let's tell everybody who we are. I'm Joe Garcia.
I'm Jared Garcia. We run White Realtors Performance Homes in Farmingdale, and we got some big goals for 2026. I have some personally and business-wise. What's some of the goals you're not trying to do, what are the things we're going to do this year?
So I said this, things I've wanted to do for like a year. All of 2025, I wanted to get to stuff, and you're going to talk, I'm sure, about doing things on purpose. So one of the things I did was I typed it to ChatGPT, the things I haven't gotten to, the things that never happened on my list. Personal thank you notes, recruiting, active recruiting, and more video and podcast work. So I typed it into ChatGPT. I said, look, make me some sort of a daily schedule. I want to hit 20 recruiting texts and calls. I want to send 10 thank you notes a week. I want to do these things. This is the list of things I want to do that I don't get to. The stuff I'm already doing is a habit. It just happens. And I said I want to do them between the hours of 9 and 1 because after lunch you just kind of lose control of your day. Make me a schedule. And then I refined it a little bit. I said, hey, print me out a checklist to make sure I do it every week. So that's what I did to get organized, to make sure I do those things of more note cards, more video and podcast, more recruiting.
One of the things we tell our agents during the onboarding and then probably almost every other sales meeting is if you truly think that you're the best option for your client, whether it's a buyer or a seller, you need to do everything in your power to go get their business, go earn their business, gain their trust and work with them because you know you're going to do a better job. And I think that relates to how we run our business. So I could look in the mirror and sleep really well at night that we put our agents in the best position possible to succeed. And I think we care more than a lot of other brokerages. We're not going to name any of them. But at the end of the day...
I can give you a list.
But at the end of the day, if we really feel that we are the best option for those agents, we need to recruit. We need to go get people out there and just tell them what we're doing here. Show under the hood of exactly what we offer. And one of the things I'm focused on in 2026 is sitting down with all our agents and finding their gaps. What's the friction in your business right now? What kind of issues are you having? And let's sit down and figure out how to fix those issues. Let's get rid of that friction because friction slows you down. And when you remove some of that friction, you could get that momentum that everyone's trying to get.
Yeah, and I know from especially the time we had in the mortgage business, one of the things companies do a really terrible job of is trying to automate or offload some of those things that bog salespeople down so that you have the salesperson who's great with one-on-one, knows how to do the marketing. They know how to do the part they really have unique skills to do. I mean, you can't get somebody with a doctorate degree to be a good salesperson because they're not going to have those human skills typically, or they just feel uncomfortable putting people in a spot or being upfront. So how can the office offload the stuff that can be done by operations people? And they really should be two separate things. One of the things you see in real estate over the last, really since probably the late 80s was, hey, everybody moved to higher split models, which is great. You should be making a big percentage of your income, of the commission. The problem with that is if the higher split comes with doing all the operations stuff, you're going to find instead of spending 70% of your time on sales activities, you're now spending at best 50, and that will quickly turn into 30% sales, 70% operations. You're taking people who aren't well suited to operations. If they were, they may never have gotten here. Real estate is typically a career you start later in life. And you're saying, go do the operations as well as the sales. And look, sales is uncomfortable, and that's okay. But it's more comfortable to work on your database. It's more comfortable to follow up with emails or to order, signs on a property. If you're doing all those activities, it's taking you too long. You're spending too much time doing that. and it will eat up too much of your time from sales. So as an office, we've always done a good job with this, and I think we get better every month. How can we automate? How can we do those tasks for the salespeople so they can do what they're good at, which is selling?
And there's a happy medium. I think somebody hits the point of diminishing returns when it comes to splits, and we're that perfect brokerage where we offer very competitive splits. We're not taking the majority of the split, but at the same time, the amount of support with our competitive splits, somebody could just run to the races with that.
I was talking to a person who's had a real estate agent for about license for about 7 years, and she said, "Look, I would never leave. I get 100% of my commission." So well, you don't get an actual 100%, right? You have desk fee, like a monthly recurring fee. You have a transaction fee. You're probably getting about 75%, which is a good split. But
and a lot of them have caps too.
Yeah. I said, but you've only done one deal the last year, and the year before that you did 1.5. I don't know, that you're not making any money. So you might have a great split at your company, but wouldn't you like to have more money? You're going to pay your bills with money, not with what your commission split is. So again, you got to find that right spot, and I think we're a company that's big enough to have all the tools, but small enough to make sure that you're going to land where you need to land, both on income, most importantly, but as well as split. You should be making a lot of the commission.
If I'm going fishing, I'd much rather take home 4 fluke than go striped bass and get nothing.
Right.
So we did decision day leading up to the new year. All our agents did our business plans, and one of the big things that we focused on was choices. So every day we make choices. What time you get out of bed? Are you eating your coffee, drinking your coffee first, or brushing your teeth? Little choices, but then as the day progresses, they're bigger choices, right? Am I going to make my calls? Am I going to the gym today? So all these choices are on purpose, and we talked about this a little earlier. And we need to make sure that we put that front and center to make good choices early on, especially earlier in the year. And that's going to pay dividends. That's going to build momentum and create some structure in people's lives.
You really do want to look at your business as a series of choices. And sometimes if you frame it as choices, it feels a little easier than decisions, right? You spend all day making decisions. A lot of times you get home after a whole day of making decisions and you're kind of tired. What do you want for dinner? I don't know. It's not that you don't know what kind of food you like to eat. It's that you don't want to make another decision. And you really want to build some systems and structure in your day of how to make those choices. Try to do it ahead of time so you're not playing whack-a-mole all day with those decisions and choices, so that you can get your business feeling more like a business and less like home.
All my life I kind of struggled with, I always in sports wanted to just kind of sprint to the finish line. I wanted to see the finish line and I worked my butt off to get there. But there's a mantra that I'm going with in 2026 where consistency beats intensity every single day. And that's not how I always played sports. That's not how I always ran my life. But it's absolutely true. If you're consistent in something for a long period of time, you're going to accomplish a lot more than being intense for a very short period of time. So I don't have it on my wall, but it's on my brain all the time, every single day, and that's kind of my mantra for 2026.
Sometimes, sticking with sports, it gets a little boring seeing the consistent team, right? You have a team, running in the 90s. Everybody ran the ball well because you got 4 or 5 yards at a clip. You got 7, 8 first downs before you scored a touchdown, and then somewhere in the last 10 years, it became just a passing league. Just chuck the ball down the field, hope for pass interference or completion. 4 or 5 plays, you score. And that didn't last very long. You're seeing more and more teams drafting running backs, running the ball well, because that consistency, it might not be as fun to watch. It might not be as fun to do. The big plays are fun, but you can't really sustain big plays.
Yeah. So as far as our brokerage, we're outpacing MLS. We're growing at a pace more so than the rest of MLS combined. And we're really, I want to put wood on the fire. I want to just keep this thing going. And I'm excited. So, what's some things that, we kind of talk all the time. What's some things we're going to do this year to really get going and keep
Well, first I want
to
get to your point. Too many companies right now are just really happy if their agents are down 20%. Well, you're down 20%, but that's great because everybody else is 30, 40% down. man, when you got to pay your mortgage every month, 20% down is not a good feeling. That you might be okay, but that's no vacation, that's no Disney, that's no cruise. There's some cutbacks there. So I'm glad we're not that. I'm glad we're doing better. Even breaking even and staying in one spot though doesn't feel great. So putting wood on the fire is where you want to be, and it's doing more of what real estate is, talking to more people about buying or selling real estate, and giving them really just violent customer service. And I don't mean like fighting your customers. I mean doing all the things that you should be doing with intensity, but making that feel like that consistent march towards the end line. And how do you do that? Building those systems, making those decisions ahead of time, understanding this is what I'm going to do every single time, and then taking it in small bites. If you talk to 10 people a day, could you talk to 10 people today? If I said, I'll give you $1 million if you go talk to 10 people about housing.
If it was a goal, it would be very easy to do.
I'd go to the CVS. There's always like 1 million people online at the pharmacy. Hey, how are you? Where do you live? You might get arrested, but you're going to get to talk to 10 people.
You got the right shirt on for that conversation.
Yeah. So that doesn't sound like too much. Well, if you did that 6 days a week, that's 60 people a week. So you can't go speak to 60 people or 50 people today. You're not going to do it. You're going to be drained after 20, and you're going to feel like you took this sprint that you weren't ready for. So making those decisions ahead of time, making a plan for how you're going to do it, and then all of a sudden you look back after a month, you go, I spoke to a lot of people. Why do I have so many listings already? Because it feels like it feels like an accident. It feels like it's luck. But it was really those little bite-sized, that consistent action all week long.
But it starts with mindset. You can have the best business plan in the world. You're not going to be consistent. You're not going to do it every single day. You're not going to talk to 10 people a day unless you believe there's business out there. And there is. You hear these headlines, and there's a lot of bad news on the news about real estate. But at the end of the day, real estate is done every single day. Are transactions down? Yeah, but there's a lot of agents out there making a lot of money. So it starts with mindset. You have to have that mindset of abundance. And that's one of the goals that we have, to give our agents the belief that there is. And it's not, pulling the wool over your eyes. It really is. There's tons of business out there, but you have to have the mindset that there is. And when you look for something, you're going to find it. But if you're quiet and you don't believe in it, you're not going to find it. It's just that simple.
Listen, Farmingdale alone, 11735, is going to have about 25 to 30 closings every single month. So you could say, oh my God, there's no business out there, because it should be like 100 or more. There's only 35 houses that are going to close this month. How many of those did you actually need? If you did one this month, that's somewhere between 14 and 18,000 in a gross commission. How many of those did you need to do? So you could say there's not enough, or you could say there's 35. All I got to go do is 1 or 2 a month, and I'm gonna hit my numbers. I only have to do 4. I have to do 10. Well, that's less than a third of the business anyway. It's attainable. And you talk about mindset. It's the biggest problem in real estate right now, and probably has been forever. Agents don't really have the mindset that I'm even going to be in the business in 2 years. So why would I do these little chunks? Why would I set my business up? Why would I invest in my marketing? Why would I invest in yellow shirts, and logos? Why would I do that if I'm probably not even going to be in the business in a year? I'm going to go make pizza. I'm going to go take a job at an insurance company, whatever. So they start out with the wrong mindset.
They don't think more than 3 to 6 months ahead.
No, and small businesses do the same thing. People don't realize, the super successful ones obviously do, but your average small business you walk into, the average restaurant owner, the average pizzeria owner, they're not sure they're going to be here in 2-3 years either, so they're not making a lot of long-term decisions.
When I think about lack of inventory, and I think about a lot of agents being successful and some struggling, for some reason, a constant thing that goes in my head is like going upstate New York in the parking lot of a fishing parking lot, and everyone gets out, they go in the river and they start casting, but a few other people will start to walk upstream, and a few other people will even walk further. And eventually, the people all the way upstream are catching all the fish, and all the people that stayed by the parking lot caught nothing. So you have to be proactive. You have to go get the business. You can't just wait for it.
If you stick with the fishing, I have 3 kids, so Dominic and Anthony are very different. So Dominic will fish for about a half hour, 40 minutes, on the dock in Lake George where everybody catches. Those fish you stick your finger in there, they might bite it. And he maybe catches a fish, or maybe he says, I'm going to go swim for a little while. And he'll go home, he'll finish the day, say, there's no fish, I couldn't catch any fish. Anthony starts out with the mindset of, I'm going to catch a fish. There's no doubt in his mind he's going to catch a fish. He might have I might look at it as wasted, but sat on the dock for 8 hours. And at 8 hours, he finally catches the fish, and he goes back and says, I knew I was going to catch. I always catch. Well, he always catches because he doesn't give up. At the end of the day, it's atomic habits. It's
change your identity.
It's also about being at the right place, in the right brokerage, that company culture, where when you wake up that day or you're in the middle of your day and something kind of goes wrong, if you're around a bunch of negative Nancys, you're going to get negative quick. And you really want to be at a place where, okay, that happened, no big deal. You made a mistake or something went wrong with a transaction. Here's how we're going to fix it, and let's move on to the next one. Imagine if every time a baseball batter got a strike one, if they spent the next 10 minutes sulking. 10 minutes go, I stink, I can't even see strikes and balls. You have 2 more tries in that at-bat. You're going to get another 2 or 3 or 4 at-bats that game. There's 162 games. You have to just be ready. All right, what's next? Let's keep going. And you want to be in a place where you feel the support, where you feel like, your manager, your coach is going to
talk you up,
get you to the next spot.
Because we all know what to do. But sometimes you just need a little motivation, a little support, and just feel like you're part of something, and it's going to help you get there.
The real estate stuff is never really the challenge. I tell people, I've been making this kind of a joke. I guess it sounds a little like an elevator pitch. I sell houses that I don't own to people who can't really afford them, right? Because they need a mortgage. And when you really boil it down, that's not all that difficult. The actual real estate stuff, it's not easy, but it's not that difficult. A lot of it is going to be the other stuff, doing the other stuff well, making those decisions, taking the bite-sized pieces, knowing what to do. That's where agents go from doing a couple transactions as a side hustle to making it a career.
The devil's in the details.
It always is.
So something we've been talking about for probably 5 or 6 years was corporations buying single-family homes. And just in general, housing was not a national topic. People talked about how there was a difficulty of achieving home ownership, but that's kind of where it ended. It seems like maybe we're going to start to get some national news and maybe even some legislation to maybe help that kind of problem. But let's talk about kind of what the corporations are doing over the last probably 10 years.
Yeah, so we're going to see if the federal government could actually put a lid on this, but we've been talking about it a while. Big hedge funds will come in. So you have a piece of land somewhere in the South probably, but it could be anywhere. It's happened in New York. You have a piece of land. It gets developed into maybe townhouses or single-family houses, very typically. Maybe it's a 200 house subdivision. So you have this old farm field, 200 houses get built, roads, all that, electric, and usually they go up for sale. And the builder has a lot of times a realtor on site, or they contract with a company, and they sell 200 houses to 200 families that want to live there. What has been happening for a while, for 6-7 years, is a large institutional hedge fund comes into the builder and says, all right, you were going to sell all these houses for $450,000, $500,000, these townhouses, condos. Here's what we're going to do. We'll pay you your price minus maybe a 10% discount because you don't have any of these marketing expenses. We'll just buy them all. We'll just buy the whole development. And like apartment buildings, that 200-unit subdivision will have a property manager and a super, and they manage the 200 houses on site, and they just get rented. So 2 things happened. 1, 200 houses, new construction houses, didn't enter the market. But also, a lot of the people who buy those were probably going to be move-up buyers who maybe had a smaller, older starter home, where that house would have been available for a different clientele, different affordability number. So you've been seeing this happen for a long time. It's really driving the cost of housing up. It's making home ownership less obtainable for first-time home buyers, for families. And there's some talk now nationally about stopping hedge funds from being able to buy those single-family homes.
And one of the problems with the hedge funds and these big corporations buying these single-family homes is, let's say me and you bought a single-family home. There's a life expectancy of that home ownership. We're going to sell eventually. It's just inevitable.
7, 10, 15 years later.
Where these corporations, they're going off 50 to 100-year plans. Like, they have no intention on selling these, and they, within reason, will never go back on the market. So you're basically taking housing completely off the market, and you're forcing more people to rent. They're stuck in these rentals.
We have not been building enough housing in America for a very long time now. And we're now stuck with, building materials and plastics. Those are sometimes difficult to produce fast enough. There's not enough skilled labor to build more housing and to catch up. So you really have two problems, which is there isn't enough being built as it is, and then what is getting built is not hitting the market, and it's driving the cost up. It also really turns communities into rental communities, which also means if you own most of the single-family homes all of them in that subdivision, can you just move down the street for cheaper rent? What happens when they decide to raise the rent? It raises on everybody, so it really drives higher rental prices as well.
It's going to be an interesting topic. There's a lot of conversation on how we can make housing more affordable, and there's not a whole lot of faith that there'll be any sort of legislation to do so, but I think it's important that it's a conversation now.
Yeah, and there's talk about Fannie and Freddie Mac purchasing more mortgage bonds. One of the things that's been happening is you look at where the Treasury, the T-bill, which really drives what the mortgage rates are going to be, is here, but mortgage rates are there, and they call that the delta. If you imagine that river, it deltas. It kind of creates that fan at the bottom. There is a larger spread between where the T-bill is and where the mortgage rates are than historically there should be. It should only
for
be
a while now.
Yes, and if they do stop purchasing more mortgage bonds, there's more money going into it. There's more competition to purchase those, which means rates should come down. That delta should decrease, and that's really an important part of the puzzle. Is you want to drive mortgage rates down so that there's less profit being made by, again, who's making all that profit on the mortgage-backed securities? Big institutional hedge funds and publicly traded companies.
That would be good. I think we kind of mentioned this in the past, where we feel that rates have to get down to maybe that 5.5, maybe even the low 5s, to really create some significant churn. But we're already starting to see homeowners have that interest now that they're in those low 6s. So I think a little dip in interest rates could help that come along.
Yeah, and I think people also have a understanding too, and there's an appetite to buy down the rates a little bit, so that 6% comes into the mid 5s pretty easily. Pretty
one of the things we started right back in 1993, 95, was first-time home buyers, and having that ability to buy your first home in your family creates that generational wealth. It creates structure. It creates roots in a community. So it's definitely something that's very important.
You got to own your house. You got to own a house. So if you're in a high-cost neighborhood, if you live in Manhattan, the chances you're going to own your house is very, very low. First of all, there aren't houses; they're condos. So you might have to purchase your condo, which is like a 2-bedroom condo, for $1.5 million. That might not be possible. But if you're living in Manhattan and paying rent, you're probably making a lot of money. And some people were smart over the years, and they would buy a house. That might have been in the Poconos. That might have been upstate. Might have been down in Florida for vacations. And at the very least, you're still building that wealth. So if you're in a spot where you could buy a house, but you can't live in the neighborhood you want to live in, buy a house. Make it a rental. Make it a vacation home. But you need to own your real estate. Why do you think the big institutional investors, J.P. Morgan a few years ago made $1 billion investment into a company that purchases single-family homes, while J.P. Morgan was giving advice, the market's going to crash? Why do you think these hedge funds are chasing single-family housing? Do you think it's because they believe it's going to go down?
They didn't issue a press release on that either.
No. So if all the smart money is saying buy real estate, you should be buying real estate too. It's so important. If it's nothing else but a hedge against inflation, there's always inflation. You're not going to have deflation. There's always inflation. Properties will always go up in value. But if not, it's still going to be worth what you paid for it, and now you don't have the mortgage anymore. And that's why home ownership is so important. When you're paying rent, you burn that rent check every month. When you're paying mortgage, at the very least, it's a forced savings plan.
Over time, real estate works every time.
It does. Look, there's billionaires buying farmland right now. Why do they buy farmland? Because it'll go up in value. It's like buying gold or silver. It's a physical, tangible thing that actually exists. Land doesn't go bankrupt. Houses don't go bankrupt. They will always be worth something.
So last thoughts, I'm going to say it again. Consistency beats intensity every single time. So again, that's my mantra going into 2026. That's what I want my agents to believe, because it is absolutely true. And they got to have the mindset that there's business out there. They got to have the business plan that's going to work, and they got to do it consistently over time to be great, right? And once you become great, maybe you be elite, but I'm not being average in 2026.
No, there's no room for average. First of all, average has gone down. Just like test scores in America, the average agent's doing way less. So you don't want to be down here. What's average today, 10 years ago, would have been subpar. So you need to be above average. And I'll caution everybody. I always say it. I say it a lot. Perfect is the enemy of great. You could look at your plan and look at that consistent, plan that you plan on doing and all those activities and say, oh, but I'm not doing this, or I really should be doing that. It's okay. It's great. It's great what you got. Just do it now. Just go do it.
I always said, you follow a very, very successful real estate agent. You think they got it all figured out. Their day is messy too. It absolutely is. So you just got to go out and do it. For those of you that kind of want to look under our hood and check out our business, we're an open book.
Well, at the very least, every chamber meeting you go to, there's like 5 insurance agents, and they all say the same thing. Let me review your plans. If you're in good shape, we'll tell you stay where you are. It's good to build that Rolodex. It's good to network. We should get together and just really get a feel for what you're doing well. We'll tell you what we're doing well. There's no secrets here. And if that means one day we hook up, great. If not, I just want everybody to be successful and to be above average.
All right. We'll see you next week.
See you soon.